Unlike many of football's fiercest rivalries, Le Classique has a relatively short yet storied history. To get a sense of the two clubs, perhaps we'll start by introducing the older of these two French giants, Olympique de Marseille. Founded by René Dufour de Montmirail in 1892, the club went by a number of monikers over their first 7 years of life, including Football Club de Marseille, US Phocéens, and Sporting Club. However, in 1899, the club was officially christened as Olympique de Marseille, paying homage to the city's ancient Greek roots. By the 1920s, Marseille had announced themselves as a dominant force in French football, winning the Coupe de France in 1924, 1926 and 1927, as well as the French Championship in 1929. The following decade, in 1937, the club would take residence at a new home, one befitting of champions and a stadium they still play in now, the Stade Vélodrome. Les Phocéens would continue to compete for trophies throughout the 20th century, often jostling for supremacy alongside clubs like Bordeaux and Saint-Étienne. But in 1970, a new kid emerged on the block, heralding from the nation's capital. That year, the founders of Paris FC, Guy Crescent and Pierre-Étienne Guyot, decided to merge their newly found team with Henri Petrel's Stade Saint-Germain, following their promotion to the second division. This group of businessmen were committed to creating a major team in the French capital. However, even after pooling together both teams' resources, Paris FC's founders providing finances, whereas Stade Saint-Germain would provide the infrastructure, they still needed more money to supercharge their project. Enter Santiago Bernabéu, the president of Real Madrid. Upon meeting the French founders, he emphasized that the best way to generate finances and create fan buy-in from the Parisians was to launch a crowdfunding campaign. The businessman swiftly took Bernabéu's advice. 20,000 people went on to back the exciting new project, and a new team was born on June 17, 1970, Paris Saint-Germain. However, it wasn't all sunshine and roses from the off. In 1971, Paris City Council flexed its muscles by offering to write off the club's debt in exchange for changing the name to something more Parisian. What followed were disagreements at board level over the proposed name change, and when the council dug their feet into the ground over the proposal, the two clubs split again. Council-backed Guy Crescent reformed Paris FC, whereas the Petrel-led PSG were administratively relegated to the French third division, and in so losing their professional status. Although initially not too worried about a Paris-based club on a sporting level, having won the league and cup double in 1972, the idea of a future footballing powerhouse in the capital city got folks in Marseille miffed, viewing the capital's newest outfit as artificial and nouveau riche. Off the pitch, fast developing was a battle between France's largest cities, with the Marseillais angry at how France was becoming so Paris-centric. It was a battle of North versus South, capital versus province, political class versus working class, aristocracy versus the people, although there's an irony in that last one, as it was in fact Marseille, who were founded by aristocratic gentlemen compared to the fan-owned roots of PSG. Whatever the tropes, sooner or later, the political off-pitch rivalries would transfer into footballing on-pitch battles, and that timeline was fast accelerated when fashion designer Daniel Hector took over as the chairman of Paris Saint-Germain in 1973. With Hector came a newly designed kit, much-needed finances, and the mind-blowing appointment of Just Fontaine as the club's new sporting director. Indeed, in a serendipitous twist of fortunes, the very season PSG were promoted to the top flight, their former bedfellows Paris FC were relegated from it. The stadium previously occupied by Paris FC then fell into the hands of the capital's newly promoted club, and thus the Parc des Princes became the permanent home of PSG. On the pitch, PSG were becoming an established team within Division 1. However, off-pitch shenanigans plunged the club into turmoil in 1978, when the French Football Federation handed chairman Daniel Hector a lifetime ban from football for running an illegal ticketing scheme at the Parc des Princes. Vice President Francis Borelli took over as PSG's new premier, and in 1982, the Parisians bagged their first major honour when they defeated Michel Platini's Saint-Étienne in the Coupe de France final, winning 6-5 in the penalty shootout. They then successfully defended the French Cup the following season, defeating Nantes, and truly announced themselves as a force to be reckoned with in 1986 by winning the Division 1 title under manager Gérard Houllier. That same year, French businessman Bernard Tapie bought Marseille. Investing heavily, Tapie made a host of star signings for the club, with players like Eric Cantona, Abedi Pelé, Jean-Pierre Papin, and Chris Waddle brought in to revamp the fortunes of Les Phocéens. For OM supporters, it was a rebirth. The Velodrome roared again, making Saturday nights on the Mediterranean the hottest ticket in French football. And for PSG fans, it meant that every trip south carried extra edge. Now, both competing at the top table of French football, the rivalry between the two clubs ignited. Notably, this came to a head during the 1988-89 season, when the PSG president Borelli accused Marseille's president Tapie of match fixing after Franck Sauzet scored a last-minute header to secure the title for OM in the Parisians' backyard. What a scandalous claim it was from the PSG premier. Or was it? Whilst Les Phocéens were enjoying their golden era, the powers that be at media giants Canal Plus sought to exploit the escalating rivalry between the two clubs for, of course, financial gain. Spotting a burgeoning business opportunity, the French TV channel bought PSG in 1991 after Borelli's reign came to a scandalous end, with grave financial irregularities and major debts uncovered at Les Parisiens. Somewhat in cahoots with Tapie and with Marseille's closest rivals, Bordeaux, starting to fade away, a financially flush PSG would be able to step into their shoes as the next true domestic contender to OM. Indeed, if PSG could become a true title challenger again, and Canal Plus could exploit the animosity between the teams as a mechanism to promote French football as a whole, this would drive more subscribers to the TV channel and greater revenue to the league itself. As PSG were rebuilding, OM would dominate French football by winning consecutive league titles before defeating AC Milan 1-0 in the Champions League final, courtesy of a Basel Boli header, to be crowned Kings of Europe in 1993. Ahead of their Champions League triumph, the two teams were duking it out for the French league title. Poetically, Marseille would cement their title win against PSG at the Stade Velodrome, mere days after winning the Champions League. However, and unbeknownst to the Marseillais during their jubilant celebrations, Les Phocéens would once again become embroiled within another French footballing scandal in 1994, leading to a decade of decline for the once champions. Remember the allegations about match fixing? Well, in 1994, Marseille were stripped of their Division 1 title from the previous season and relegated to the second tier after new allegations around match fixing and financial irregularities were upheld. Known as l'affaire Vaillant-Homme, 3 Valenciennes players were approached by Marseille player Jean-Jacques Aideli and general manager Jean-Pierre Burns to ensure OM came away from their upcoming game with the 3 points that would effectively guarantee them the league title and no injuries ahead of the Champions League final. However, following French football's bribery scandal, runners-up PSG refused to be awarded the league title and a place in the upcoming Champions League, with their owners, Canal Plus, fearful this would trigger an exodus of subscribers in Marseille. Harking back to purported favouritism for everything Paris, fans of Les Phocéens were furious to have been relegated, whilst their rivals from the capital escaped such punishment during the scandals of 1978 and 1991. However, this didn't bother the PSG faithful one jot, who enjoyed their own period of dominance, watching stars like Ginola, Leonardo and Rai at the Parc des Princes, winning multiple domestic honours and the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup. Following France's World Cup success in 1998, both teams would go on to have relative spells of indifference, but the ferocity of the rivalry remained on every meeting, none more so than during the 2006 Coupe de France final, where PSG defeated Marseille 2-1 to lift the cup. Indeed, it wouldn't be until 2010 that Marseille would be dining at the top table of French football again, when they secured a league and cup double, followed by a delicious dessert of beating the Parisians on penalties to scoop the Trophée des Champions. The following season, politics would be at play for PSG again, to the dismay of Marseille, as the French president and well-known supporter of Paris Saint-Germain, Nicolas Sarkozy, would facilitate the purchase of the club by Qatar Sports Investments. Now, with an intergalactic budget and ambitions to conquer European football, a financially doped PSG would dominate domestically, with the help of marquee signings like Ibrahimovic, Cavani and Beckham. Marseille would run them close to the title in 2013, but eventually lost out to their Parisian rivals. The teams would face off again in the finals of the Coupe de France in 2016 and Trophée des Champions in 2020, with the Parisians victorious on both occasions. However, 2020 would perhaps be more memorable for a league clash between the two teams. Against the backdrop of the COVID pandemic, a fractious match would see a record 17 cards shown, including 5 red cards during a mass brawl at the end of the game. Marseille ran out victors, winning the fiery encounter 1-0 and underscoring their first league win against PSG in 9 years, with the fans of Les Phocéens celebrating as if they'd won a title. The Parisians have all but dominated French football since, aside from a few anomalous snafus, and finally managed to win the coveted Champions League in 2025 under Luis Enrique, who abandoned their previous Galactico policy and built one of the fiercest PSG sides to date. But despite the chasm in quality between the two, every encounter between Marseille and PSG continues to be as important as the first. Fans of Les Phocéens will continue to distribute fake PSG history books to fans, with most of the pages blank, and crowds at the Parc de Prince will continue to mock OM with chants of "À jamais les premiers tricheurs," forever the first cheaters. This is the rivalry between PSG and Marseille. Thanks so much for watching. Please do like, comment and share if you enjoyed this one, and stick around for the next video on the Football Documentary channel.